Have you ever wondered how one voice from the past could completely shatter the life you've built? What if the person standing in your mansion wearing a maid's uniform was someone who once meant everything to you? Before we dive into this incredible story that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about love, sacrifice, and second chances, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because stories like this one will change how you see the world forever. Marcus Wellington stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a kingdom he had conquered. At 35, he was worth over $200 million, his tech empire spanning 3 continents. The boy who once wore second-hand clothes and ate free school lunches was now featured on magazine covers, his rags-to-riches story inspiring millions. But success, he had learned, was a lonely throne. The intercom buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. His assistant's voice crackled through the speaker with that familiar efficiency that cost him 6 figures a year. "Mr. Wellington, the new domestic staff member is here for orientation. Shall I send her up to the residence?" Marcus glanced at his Rolex, a habit he'd developed not because he needed to know the time, but because the weight of the platinum reminded him how far he'd traveled from his humble beginnings. "Yes, send her up. I'll be there in 10 minutes. His Beverly Hills mansion was a testament to his journey, every marble surface and crystal chandelier carefully chosen to reflect the success he'd fought tooth and nail to achieve. As he walked through the corridors lined with original artwork worth more than most people's homes, Marcus felt the familiar emptiness that no amount of money seemed to fill. He'd had everything money could buy, except the one thing that mattered most. The head of household staff, Mrs. Chen, was waiting in the main foyer with a woman whose back was turned toward the grand staircase. Marcus could see she was petite, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing the standard black and white uniform that all his domestic staff wore. Nothing unusual, nothing that should have made his heart skip a beat, but something about her posture, the way she held her shoulders, sent an inexplicable chill down his spine. "Mr. Wellington," Mrs. Chen said with her usual professional smile, "I'd like you to meet Elena Rodriguez, our new housekeeping specialist. She comes highly recommended and has excellent references." The woman turned around slowly, and Marcus felt the world tilt on its axis. Time seemed to freeze, the air in the room becoming thick and unbreathable. Those eyes, those same warm brown eyes that had looked at him with such love 20 years ago, were now staring back at him with a mixture of recognition and something else he couldn't quite place. Fear, resignation, pain. "Hello, Mr. Wellington," she said softly, and her voice was exactly as he remembered it, like honey and heartbreak combined. "It's nice to meet you." But it wasn't nice to meet him, because Elena Rodriguez wasn't a stranger at all. She was Elena Vasquez, the girl he'd fallen in love with in high school, the girl he'd promised to marry, the girl who had disappeared from his life without a trace 20 years ago, leaving him with nothing but questions and a broken heart that had never quite healed. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His mind raced through 1,000 possibilities, 1,000 questions, 1,000 emotions he thought he'd buried long ago. Mrs. Chen, oblivious to the earthquake happening in front of her, continued with the introduction. "Elena will be responsible for the east wing of the house, including the library and your private study. She's very experienced with delicate items and antiques." Mrs. Chen's voice seemed to come from very far away, as if Marcus were hearing it through water. Elena's eyes never left his face, and he could see she was struggling with the same shock, the same disbelief, but there was something else there, something that looked almost like shame. She was thinner than he remembered, her face bearing the subtle lines that spoke of hardship and struggle. The girl who had once dreamed of becoming a teacher, who had been valedictorian of their graduating class, was standing in his mansion wearing a maid's uniform. "That will be all, Mrs. Chen," Marcus managed to say, his voice sounding foreign to his own ears. "I'll handle the rest of the orientation myself." Mrs. Chen looked slightly surprised, but nodded professionally. "Of course, sir. Eleanor, you're in excellent hands. Mr. Wellington takes great care of his staff." She gathered her papers and left them alone in the vast foyer, her footsteps echoing off the marble floors until they faded into silence. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked away the seconds, each one feeling like an eternity. Marcus studied her face, looking for traces of the girl he'd once known, the girl he'd once loved with the desperate intensity that only first love can bring. "Elena," he finally whispered, and her name felt strange on his lips after all these years. "What are you doing here?" She looked down at her hands, clasped tightly in front of her. "I need the job, Marcus. I need the money." Her voice was barely audible, but each word hit him like a physical blow. "But how did you even know I lived here? How did you know to apply?" The questions tumbled out of him, 20 years of wondering suddenly demanding answers. Elena looked up at him then, and he saw tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. The agency just told me it was a position in Beverly Hills. I never imagined—" She trailed off, shaking her head in disbelief. Marcus felt his world spinning out of control. The woman he'd spent 2 decades trying to forget was standing in his home, and she looked like she'd been through hell. The Elena he remembered had been vibrant, full of dreams and ambition. This Elena looked defeated, worn down by life in ways that made his chest ache. "We need to talk," he said, his voice stronger now. "Really talk. But not here." He looked around the formal foyer, suddenly seeing it through her eyes. How must this look to her, her high school boyfriend, the boy who used to save his lunch money to buy her small gifts, now living in a palace while she cleaned houses for a living? "I can't," she said quickly, panic flashing in her eyes. "I need this job, Marcus. Please don't fire me because of who I am. I promise I'll stay out of your way. You'll barely know I'm here." The desperation in her voice cut through him like a knife. "Elena, I'm not going to fire you, but we can't just pretend we don't know each other. We can't pretend that what we had didn't matter." She looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. "What we had was a long time ago. We were kids. We're different people now." "Are we?" Marcus stepped closer to her, and he could smell the faint scent of the same perfume she used to wear, something light and floral that brought back a flood of memories so intense it made him dizzy. "But because standing here right now, I feel exactly like that 17-year-old boy who would have done anything for you." Elena's composure cracked slightly, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't make this harder than it already is." "Harder than what? Elena, what happened to you? Where did you go?" "One day we were making plans for college, for our future together, and the next day you were just gone. Your family moved away and no one would tell me where. I looked for you for years." She closed her eyes as if his words were causing her physical pain. "I can't do this right now, please, Marcus. I just need to work. I need to take care of my responsibilities." "What responsibilities?" he asked, but she was already backing toward the door. "I should go. Mrs. Chen said I could start tomorrow. I'll be here at 7 in the morning." She turned to leave, but Marcus caught her arm gently. "Elena, wait. At least tell me you're okay. Tell me you're safe." She looked down at his hand on her arm, and for a moment he thought she might collapse. "I'm surviving," she said quietly. "That's all I can do right now." And then she was gone, leaving Marcus standing alone in his empty mansion, feeling more lost than he had in 20 years. He sank into one of the antique chairs that cost more than most people's cars, his head in his hands, trying to process what had just happened. The girl he'd never stopped loving was back in his life, but she was a stranger now, carrying secrets and pain that he couldn't begin to understand. And tomorrow she would be in his house, cleaning his rooms, while he tried to figure out how to bridge the gap between the boy who loved her and the man he'd become. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He walked through his house, seeing it with new eyes. Every luxury, every expensive piece of art, every symbol of his success felt hollow and meaningless. He found himself in his study, looking at the framed photograph he kept hidden in his desk drawer, the only picture he had of Elena from their high school days. They were at prom, her in a simple blue dress that she'd bought at a thrift store but looked like a princess in E, him in a rented tuxedo that was too big for his skinny frame. They looked so young, so hopeful, so completely in love. He'd built an empire, conquered the business world, and accumulated more wealth than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. But looking at that photograph, he realized that he'd never been as rich as he was in that moment when he had her love. The next morning, Marcus was awake before dawn, pacing his bedroom like a caged animal. He'd changed clothes 3 times, unable to decide how to present himself. Should he dress casually to seem approachable? Should he wear a suit to maintain professional boundaries? In the end, he settled on dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt, something that felt more like the old Marcus, the one Elena had known. He heard her arrive precisely at 7, her quiet voice greeting Mrs. Chen in the kitchen. Marcus positioned himself in his study, pretending to work while straining to hear every sound she made. He could track her movements through the house by the soft footsteps, the gentle closing of doors, the quiet efficiency with which she worked. Around 10 o'clock, he couldn't stand it anymore. He found her in the library, carefully dusting the leather-bound books that lined the walls from floor to ceiling. She was reaching for a high shelf, standing on her tiptoes, and for a moment she looked exactly like the girl who used to reorganize his locker for him because she said his chaos stressed her out. "Let me help you with that," he said, stepping into the room. Elena startled, nearly dropping the feather duster. "I'm sorry, I didn't know you were here. I can come back later." "No, please don't go." Marcus moved closer, reaching up to dust the books she couldn't reach. "This is your job. I'm the one who should leave." They worked in silence for a few minutes, the tension in the room so thick it was almost suffocating. Finally, Marcus couldn't take it anymore. "Elena, we have to talk about this. We can't just dance around each other forever." She stopped dusting and looked at him, her eyes filled with a sadness so deep it made his chest ache. "What do you want me to say, Marcus? That I'm sorry, that I regret leaving? That seeing you like this, seeing what you've accomplished, doesn't make me feel like the biggest failure in the world." "You're not a failure," he said fiercely. "Don't you ever say that about yourself." "Look at me," she said, gesturing to her uniform. "Look at where I am and look at where you are. We're not even living in the same universe anymore." "I don't care about any of that," Marcus said, and he meant it. "I care about you. I care about what happened to you, where you've been, why you left." Eleanor sat down heavily in one of the leather chairs, suddenly looking exhausted. "You really want to know? You want to know why I disappeared from your life without a word?" "Yes," he said, sitting across from her. "I've wanted to know for 20 years. She was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I was pregnant." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He felt the air leave his lungs, felt the room spin around him. "What?" "I was 17 and pregnant, and I was terrified. My parents were furious. They said I'd ruin my life, ruin my future. They said you'd ruin my future." Eleanor's voice was steady now, as if she'd practiced this speech 1,000 times. "They moved us to Phoenix the next week. Said we needed a fresh start, away from the boy who had corrupted their daughter." Marcus felt like he was drowning. "Elena, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you give me a chance to help, to be there for you?" "Because you had dreams," she said, tears flowing freely now. "You were going to MIT. You were going to change the world. I couldn't be the reason you gave all that up. That should have been my choice to make," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "That baby was mine too. You were mine too." Elena looked at him with such pain in her eyes that he wanted to gather her in his arms and never let her go. I know I was wrong. But I was 17 and scared, and my parents convinced me that I was doing the right thing for both of us." "What happened to the baby?" Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Elena's face crumpled. "I lost her at 6 months." Complications. The doctor said it sometimes happens with young mothers, especially when they're under stress. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I named her Sophia. I thought you should know that. Marcus felt like someone had reached into his chest and torn his heart out. A daughter. He'd had a daughter, and he'd never even known she existed. Elena had carried that pain alone for 20 years, had lost their child while he was at college, oblivious to her suffering. Elena, I'm so sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. He wanted to reach for her, to comfort her, but he didn't know if he had the right anymore. After I lost Sophia, I fell apart. I dropped out of school, couldn't focus on anything. My parents thought I was being dramatic, told me to get over it and move on with my life. I tried to go to community college, but I couldn't concentrate. I got married when I was 22, to a man who seemed stable and kind, but he changed after we got married. He became controlling, then abusive. Marcus felt rage building in his chest, a fury so intense it scared him. Did he hurt you? For 8 years, Elena said quietly. I finally got the courage to leave him 3 years ago, but by then I had nothing. No education, no career, no savings. He'd made sure I was completely dependent on him. I've been working cleaning jobs ever since, trying to get back on my feet. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and each one broke Marcus's heart a little more. The girl who had been valedictorian, who had dreamed of teaching children, who had been the smartest person he'd ever known, had been systematically destroyed by circumstances and people who should have protected her. Elena, why didn't you try to find me? I could have helped. I would have done anything to help you. She looked at him with a bitter smile. And say what? Hey, Marcus, remember me, the girl who disappeared from your life 20 years ago. I'm broken, and I need money. I couldn't do that to you. Besides, I saw you on magazine covers. I knew you were successful, probably married to some brilliant, accomplished woman. I couldn't just show up and complicate your perfect life. My life isn't perfect, Marcus said. It's empty. I never married. I never found anyone who could make me feel the way you did. I've spent 20 years building an empire, but I've been completely alone. Elena stared at him in disbelief. You never got married. How could I? Every woman I met I compared to you. Every relationship I tried to build was built on the foundation of a broken heart that never healed. Marcus leaned forward in his chair. Elena, I never stopped loving you. Not for one day in 20 years. The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with 20 years of longing and regret. Elena looked at him with an expression he couldn't read, hope and fear warring in her eyes. Marcus, you don't understand. I'm not the girl you remember. I'm damaged. I'm broken. I have panic attacks. I have trust issues. I'm not worthy of someone like you. Don't you dare say that, Marcus said fiercely. You survived. You endured things that would have destroyed most people, and you're still here. You're still fighting. That doesn't make you broken, Eleanor. That makes you the strongest person I've ever known. Before she could respond, Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, looking apologetic but determined. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Wellington, but you have a conference call with the Tokyo office in 5 minutes. Marcus wanted to tell Mrs. Chen that the Tokyo office could wait, that the entire business world could wait. But Elena was already standing up, smoothing down her uniform. I should get back to work anyway, she said, not meeting his eyes. Thank you for listening, Marcus. It felt good to finally tell someone the truth. This conversation isn't over, Marcus said as she headed for the door. We have a lot more to talk about. Elena paused at the doorway, looking back at him with an expression that was part hope, part terror. Do we? Because I'm not sure talking about the past is going to change anything about the present. And then she was gone again, leaving Marcus to face his conference call with his mind completely elsewhere. As he discussed quarterly projections and market strategies with executives halfway around the world, all he could think about was the girl who had been cleaning his books an hour earlier, the girl who had carried his child and lost her, The girl who had survived hell and somehow found her way back into his life. That afternoon, Marcus cancelled all his meetings. He couldn't concentrate on business when his entire world had been turned upside down. Instead, he found himself walking through his house, seeing Elena's presence everywhere. She worked with a quiet efficiency that spoke of years of practice, but he could see the care she took with his belongings, the way she handled his books and artwork, as if they were precious. He found her in his bedroom, changing the sheets on his massive king-size bed, and the intimacy of the moment hit him like a punch to the gut. This was Elena, his Elena, in his most private space, and the wrongness of the situation made him feel sick. "Elena, stop," he said from the doorway. She looked up, startled. "Is something wrong? Did I do something incorrectly? You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be cleaning my house, changing my sheets. This is all wrong." Elena's face hardened. "This is my job, Marcus. This is what I do. I clean houses for rich people who can afford to pay someone else to do their dirty work." "But you're not just someone else," Marcus said, stepping into the room. "And you're Elena. You're the girl who helped me with calculus. You're the girl who believed in me when no one else did. You're the mother of my child." "I was the mother of your child," Elena corrected, her voice sharp with pain. "Sophia died 20 years ago, and the girl who helped you with calculus died with her. I'm just Elena Rodriguez now, a woman who needs this job to pay her rent." Marcus felt frustration building in his chest. "Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to pretend that what we had doesn't matter?" "Because it doesn't matter," Elena exploded, dropping the pillowcase she'd been holding. "It doesn't matter that we loved each other 20 years ago. It doesn't matter that we had dreams and plans and promises. Look at us, Marcus. Look at where we are. You're a billionaire living in a mansion, and I'm your maid. We're not the same people we were, and we're certainly not equals anymore." "Money doesn't make me better than you," Marcus said fiercely. "Doesn't it?" Eleanor challenged. "You have the power to fire me with a word. You have the power to ruin my life if I displease you. You have the power to make me disappear again, just like my parents did 20 years ago. How is that not being better than me?" Marcus stared at her, realizing for the first time how the power dynamic between them must look from her perspective. She was right. He held all the cards, all the power, all the control. She was completely vulnerable, completely at his mercy. "Elena, I would never hurt you. I would never use my position to harm you in any way." "You say that now," Elena said, her voice quieter but still guarded. "But what happens when you get tired of this nostalgia trip? What happens when you remember that I'm the girl who broke your heart and disappeared without a word? What happens when you decide that having me around is too complicated, too messy for your perfect life?" Marcus felt like she'd slapped him. "Is that really what you think of me? That I'm that shallow, that cruel?" Elena looked at him with eyes that had seen too much pain, too much disappointment. "I think you're a good man, Marcus. But I also think you're a man who's used to getting what he wants, when he wants it, and I can't afford to trust that your feelings for me will last longer than your patience with the complications I bring." The truth of her words hit him hard. She was right to be cautious. She was right to protect herself. He had all the power in this situation, and she had none. The realization made him feel sick. "What can I do?" he asked quietly. "How can I prove to you that I'm not going to hurt you?" Elena looked at him for a long moment, and he could see her internal struggle playing out on her face. "Let me do my job," she said finally. "Let me work here and earn my money and try to rebuild my life. Don't make this about the past. Don't make this about feelings that died a long time ago." "My feelings for you never died," Marcus said softly. "Then maybe they should have," Elena replied, and her words cut through him like a blade. She finished changing the sheets in silence, and Marcus watched her work, memorizing every movement, every expression. When she was done, she gathered the dirty linens and headed for the door. "Elena!" he called after her. She stopped, but didn't turn around. "I'm glad you're here," he said. "Whatever the circumstances, whatever the complications, I'm glad you're safe and I'm glad you're here." She stood still for a moment, her shoulders tense. "I'm glad you're happy, Marcus. I'm glad you got everything you dreamed of." And then she was gone, leaving Marcus alone in his bedroom that suddenly felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. Over the next few days, Marcus tried to respect Elena's wishes. He tried to treat her like any other employee, to maintain professional boundaries, to pretend that seeing her every day wasn't slowly driving him insane. But it was impossible. Every glimpse of her sent his heart racing. Every time he heard her voice, he was transported back to high school, to a time when the future seemed full of infinite possibilities. He found himself making excuses to be in whatever room she was cleaning. He started working from home more often, claiming he needed the quiet to focus, but really just wanting to be near her. He noticed everything about her, the way she hummed softly while she worked, the way she paused to read the spines of books in his library, the way she carefully tended to the plants in his solarium as if they were her own children. But he also noticed the things that broke his heart, the way she flinched when he entered a room unexpectedly, the way she kept her eyes down when they passed in the hallway, the way she seemed to make herself smaller, less noticeable, as if she were trying to disappear. One afternoon, he found her in his home office, staring at the wall where he'd hung his college degrees and business awards. She was so absorbed in reading them that she didn't notice him in the doorway. "MIT, Harvard Business School," she said softly, not realizing he was there. "You did it, Marcus. You did everything you said you would do. We were supposed to do it together," Marcus said, stepping into the room. Elena spun around, her face flushing with embarrassment at being caught. "I'm sorry, I was just dusting and I saw—" "Elena, stop apologizing for existing," Marcus said, frustration creeping into his voice. "You have every right to look at anything in this house. You have every right to be curious about my life." "Do I?" she asked, and there was something in her voice that made him look at her more closely. "What do you mean?" Elena set down her dusting cloth and looked at him directly for the first time in days. "I mean, do I really have the right to be curious about your life when I gave up the right to be part of it 20 years ago?" Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. "Elena, I've been thinking about what you said, about how we were supposed to do everything together. And you're right, we had plans. We were going to go to college together, get married, build a life together. But I took that choice away from you when I left, without telling you why. You were 17 and scared," Marcus said. "You were doing what you thought was best." "Was I?" Elena asked. "Or was I being a coward? Was I running away because I was afraid that if you knew about the baby, you'd stay with me out of obligation instead of love?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with 20 years of what-ifs and might-have-beens. "I would have stayed because I loved you," Marcus said quietly. "The baby would have just been one more reason to love you, not an obligation to endure." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I know that now, but at 17, with my parents telling me I was ruining both our lives, with the whole world seeming to fall apart around me, I couldn't see past my own fear. Elena, we can't change the past. But we're both here now. We're both alive, and we have a chance to—" "To what?" Elena interrupted. "To pretend that 20 years didn't happen. To pretend that we're the same people we were in high school. Marcus, look at me. Really look at me. I'm not the girl you fell in love with. That girl died when Sophia died." Marcus stepped closer to her, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, close enough to smell that faint floral scent that still made his heart race. "You're wrong," he said softly. "You're absolutely wrong. The girl I fell in love with was kind and strong and brilliant and brave. She was someone who cared about others more than herself, someone who saw the best in people even when they couldn't see it themselves. And that woman is standing right in front of me." Elena shook her head. "You're seeing what you want to see, Marcus. You're remembering who I used to be." "No," Marcus said firmly. "I'm seeing who you are. I'm seeing a woman who survived losing a child, who survived an abusive marriage, who survived being left with nothing and still found the strength to keep going. I'm seeing a woman who works with dignity and grace, even when life has knocked her down over and over again. That's not the broken person you think you are, Elena. That's the strongest person I've ever known. Elena stared at him, and he could see the war being fought behind her eyes. Hope and fear, love and self-protection, the desire to believe him and the certainty that she couldn't afford to. Marcus, even if what you're saying is true, even if I'm not as broken as I think I am, we can't go back. Too much has happened. Too much has changed. I'm not asking you to go back, Marcus said. I'm asking you to move forward with me. The words were out before he could stop them, and he saw Elena's eyes widen in shock. What are you saying? Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that what he said next would change everything between them, one way or another. I'm saying that I've spent 20 years building a fortune, but I've never been as rich as I was when I had your love. I'm saying that every success I've achieved feels hollow because I couldn't share it with you. I'm saying that finding you again feels like finding a piece of my soul that I thought was lost forever. Elena backed away from him, shaking her head. Marcus, you can't mean that. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, Marcus said, following her. I'm saying that I love you. I never stopped loving you. And if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that you're worthy of every good thing this world has to offer. Eleanor's back hit the wall, and she looked at him with panic in her eyes. You don't love me. You love the memory of me. You love the girl I used to be. Then let me get to know the woman you are now, Marcus said, placing his hands on the wall on either side of her, not trapping her, but surrounding her with his presence. Let me learn who you've become. Let me earn your trust. Let me show you that what we had wasn't just teenage infatuation. It was real, Elena. It was the kind of love that people spend their whole lives searching for. Elena looked up at him, and he could see her resolve crumbling. Marcus, I'm scared. I'm so scared of getting hurt again. I'm scared of believing in something beautiful, only to have it taken away. I'm scared too, Marcus admitted. And I'm terrified that you'll disappear again, that I'll wake up tomorrow and find out this was all a dream. But I'm more scared of letting you go without fighting for us. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the weight of 20 years of separation and longing hanging between them. Then slowly, Elena reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the lines that hadn't been there when they were teenagers. You really never got married, she whispered. How could I? Marcus said, leaning into her touch. My heart belonged to a girl who disappeared 20 years ago. I kept hoping she'd come back to me. Elena's eyes filled with tears. And I'm not the same girl, Marcus. I come with baggage and scars and trust issues. I have panic attacks. I wake up screaming sometimes from nightmares about my ex-husband. I'm not the easy, uncomplicated love you remember. I don't want easy, Marcus said fiercely. I want you, all of you. The scars, the fears, the strength, the beauty, the pain, the healing. I want to be the man who helps you feel safe again. I want to be the man who reminds you every day that you're worthy of love and respect and every beautiful thing in this world. Elena was crying now, tears streaming down her face as 20 years of walls began to crumble. What if I can't be what you need? What if I'm too damaged to love you the way you deserve? Then we'll figure it out together, Marcus said, wiping her tears with his thumbs. We'll take it one day at a time, one moment at a time. We'll build something new, something stronger than what we had before, because it will be built on who we really are, not who we used to be. Elena searched his eyes, looking for any sign of doubt, any hint that he didn't mean what he was saying, but all she saw was love, pure and unwavering and patient. I love you too, she whispered, and the words were like a dam bursting. I never stopped loving you either, even when I hated myself for it, even when I tried to convince myself that what we had was just a childhood fantasy. I never stopped loving you. Marcus felt his heart soar, felt 20 years of emptiness suddenly filled with light and hope and possibility. "Elena," he breathed, and then he was kissing her, soft and gentle and reverent, like she was something precious that might break if he held her too tightly. Elena kissed him back, and it was like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. It was like finding water in the desert, like seeing the sun after years of darkness. It was everything she remembered, and nothing like she remembered, because they weren't children anymore. They were adults who had been broken and rebuilt, who had lost everything and somehow found each other again. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. "What happens now?" Elena asked, her voice shaky with emotion. "And now we start over," Marcus said, resting his forehead against hers. "Now we build a life together, the life we should have had 20 years ago." "I don't know how to do this," Elena admitted. "I don't know how to be in a relationship with someone who has so much when I have so little." "Then we'll learn together," Marcus said. "And Elena, you don't have little. You have everything I've been missing. You have the other half of my soul." Over the next few weeks, Marcus and Eleanor began the delicate process of rebuilding their relationship. It wasn't easy. Eleanor's trust issues ran deep, and there were moments when she would panic, convinced that Marcus would eventually realize she wasn't worth the trouble. Marcus had his own struggles, learning to be patient when every instinct told him to sweep her away from all her problems and fix everything with his money and influence. But slowly, carefully, they began to heal together. Marcus fired the cleaning service and hired Elena as his personal assistant instead, giving her a salary that would allow her to be financially independent while still being close to him. He helped her enroll in night classes to finish her education, something she'd always regretted not doing. Elena, in turn, helped Marcus remember what it felt like to be truly happy. She brought warmth and laughter back into his cold, empty mansion. She reminded him that success meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. They talked for hours about the years they'd lost, about Sophia, about the pain they'd both carried. They grieved together for the daughter they'd never known, and Marcus had a memorial garden planted in her honor, with a small plaque that read, "Sophia Wellington Vasquez, forever in our hearts." 6 months after Eleanor had walked back into his life, Marcus proposed to her in that same memorial garden, surrounded by the flowers that bloomed in memory of their daughter. Elena said yes through tears of joy, finally believing that she deserved the happiness that had found her. Their wedding was small and intimate, attended only by close friends and the family members who had supported their reunion. Elena wore a simple white dress that made her look like the princess Marcus had always known she was. Marcus cried when he saw her walking down the aisle, overwhelmed by the miracle of having her back in his life. As they exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever challenges lay ahead, Marcus thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. They had lost 20 years, had endured heartbreak and separation and pain that had nearly destroyed them both, but they had found their way back to each other, and their love was stronger for having survived the test. "Do you take this woman to be your wife?" the minister asked. "To love and to cherish, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, for better or for worse, as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Marcus said, his voice strong and clear, "and I've been waiting 20 years to say those words." "And do you take this man to be your husband?" the minister asked Elena. "To love and to cherish, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, for better or for worse, as long as you both shall live." Elena looked into Marcus's eyes, seeing the boy she'd fallen in love with and the man he'd become, seeing their past and their future all wrapped up in this perfect moment. "I do," she said, and her voice was filled with all the love and hope and healing that had brought them back together. As they kissed to seal their union, Marcus thought about the twist of fate that had brought Elena back into his life. If she hadn't needed a job, if the employment agency hadn't sent her to his house, if Mrs. Chen hadn't hired her without knowing their history, they might never have found each other again. But sometimes Marcus realized The universe has a way of correcting its mistakes. Sometimes, love really does conquer all. And sometimes, the person you thought you'd lost forever walks back into your life wearing a maid's uniform and reminds you that the greatest fortune isn't money or success or fame. It's finding your way home to the person who holds the other half of your heart. 2 years later, Elena gave birth to their son, David, a healthy, beautiful baby who had his father's eyes and his mother's smile. As Marcus held his son for the first time, with Eleanor exhausted but radiant beside him in the hospital bed, he thought about Sophia, the daughter they'd lost, and how she had somehow led them back to each other. "Thank you," he whispered to Elena, kissing her forehead as she dozed with their son in her arms. "For what?" she murmured sleepily. "For coming back to me," Marcus said. "For giving us another chance. For making me the richest man in the world." Elena smiled, her eyes still closed. "I thought you already were the richest man in the world." "No," Marcus said, looking down at his wife and son, at the family he'd thought he'd never have. "Now I am." And as he sat there in that hospital room, surrounded by more love than he'd ever dreamed possible, Marcus knew that some stories do have happy endings. Some loves do survive the test of time and circumstance and heartbreak. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person who was meant to be your forever finds their way back to you, even when it seems impossible. The black millionaire's new maid had indeed looked familiar, and when she spoke, his world had stopped. But then it had started again, better and more beautiful than ever before, because sometimes the end of one story is really just the beginning of another. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in second chances and the power of true love, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you think about Marcus and Elena's incredible journey. Have you ever had someone from your past walk back into your life when you least expected it? Share your stories below. And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing tales that will restore your faith in love, destiny, and the beautiful unpredictability of life. Remember, sometimes the most broken people become the most beautiful when they find someone who loves them exactly as they are.